Hey guys, welcome back to Coding Simplified. So today we get to learn about functions in Python, and this is where the coding really starts to get interesting. Pretty soon we're actually going to get to use some examples online and work through those together. But first, I'm going to explain the basics of what a function is and how they work, how you can write one, everything you need to know about them. So in general, you can think of a function as a machine that has inputs and outputs. So if this is our machine, we can have our inputs go here and our outputs come out here. So we can imagine that there's a box, and this box represents a machine, and the machine takes some inputs and turns them into certain outputs based on what those inputs are. So for example, a machine could take in an integer and output a string. So you don't have to output the same type of variables that you're inputting. So we're given some kind of input, and then it's our job as programmers to figure out what goes inside of this box to produce the kind of output that we want to see. We could even have more than one input or more than one output. So for example, what if our machine took an integer and a string and output a string? For our function to have some kind of meaning, these inputs and outputs have to have some kind of meaning that we give them. So normally we're going to name them. So we have an input that's an integer and an input that's a string. So maybe in this example, the integer represents the age of the user and the string represents their name. And maybe our output is some kind of string that uses both of these variables inside of it. So our job is to figure out what goes inside this box to take the inputs that we're given and create the correct output based on the context of what we're trying to accomplish. So how do you make this box inside of Python? Well, the keyword for a function in Python is def because we're defining a function. Then you're going to have a name for the function. So the function name goes here, and it's going to follow the same naming conventions as variables like we talked about last time. Then you have the inputs in these parentheses. Then you have the colon, you indent, and then everything here is inside the box. This is our magical machine. We use the keyword return, and this is going to be where we put our outputs. So let's use the example that I just drew out and maybe call it return user information. And for our inputs, we know that we're going to have an integer and a string, but because of Python's duck typing, we don't actually need to say what types of variable are here. Instead, we give names that are meaningful to what the function is going to be calculating. So we said that our integer would represent the user's age, so maybe I'll just call it something like age. And the string would be the user's name, so I'll call it something like name. So what are we going to do with this age and name? Well, maybe let's return a string that uses the age and the name. So we're going to have a string here. Remember, you can use double quotes or single quotes here and say something like, hello, my name is, and then I'm going to use a plus. We're going to attach these two strings together. Then I'm going to put name. Name is already a string, so we don't have to do a type conversion like we saw last time. Then we're going to add it to another string saying, and my age is, then I'm going to do plus. Now, because age is going to be an integer and not a string, we need to put str and then parentheses and then age to convert the age to a string so it can be added to this. This whole thing is going to become one big string, and it's going to be output by this magical machine. And we don't need anything else inside the box. So we have our integer and we have our string as inputs. We wrote what the machine's going to do, and it's going to create a new string as an output. So how are we going to use this machine? Well, I'm going to come down and create a new block of code. So in order to use this magical box that we created, we're going to copy the name and these parentheses. Let's put those down here. But now, instead of saying age and name, we have to replace these with some values that we're going to pass in. So maybe the age is 24, and the name is a string that says Devon. So now what happens is that this machine is going to be run, and these values of variables are going to be passed in to these spots here, and then they are going to be returned. Now, if I want to see the string that's returned, I can simply say print, parentheses, and put another here. So the string that gets returned is going to be printed out so that we can see it. Let's try this out. And it says, hello, my name is Devon, and my age is 24. So the values that we have here are called arguments. They're the actual values that we're passing in to this function. Over here, though, These are called parameters. They don't have a specific value, but they have names, and they define how the values that were given are going to be used. So the parameters are part of the box that says what kind of inputs it can take in. Arguments are the things that we actually put into the machine and see what comes out. Now, a function doesn't always have to return something. Instead of returning here, we could have just said print and then everything that's here. So instead of returning something, this function would just do something. It would print this out and nothing would be returned. For functions that just do something and don't return anything, it's normally a good idea to return something just in case. For example, you could return true if it's successful, but if some kind of error pops up, you could return false. That way, if the code was being run and this returned false, we know that some kind of error happened in here and we might have to try it again. So thanks for joining me and learning a little bit more about functions. Next time, we're going to apply this knowledge on some real problem-solving examples using Coding Bat. Let me know if you have any questions or suggestions in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more free coding content. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you next time.